Do you think Australia is the land of kangaroos? Then imagine a country where the true symbol of catastrophe became a rabbit. On Christmas Day in 1859, an English settler released 24 rabbits into the wild. They were meant to be nothing more than a hunting bonus, an innocent addition for sport. But Australia wasn't ready for anything that reproduced this fast and had no natural breaks. A few decades later, rabbits were no longer animals. They were a wave. Hundreds of millions of bodies capable of stripping fields, pastures, and shrubs down to bare earth, while farmers watched their crops vanish overnight. This is the story of how 24 rabbits unleashed one of the greatest ecological disasters of modern history, and how Australia declared war on them. Fences stretching for thousands of kilometers, and viruses meant to succeed where rifles had failed.
24 rabbits for Christmas, mid-19th century. Australia is still a young colony of the British Empire. Vast open land, farms, sheep herds, and among the settlers, a deep longing for home. Thomas Austin, a wealthy farmer in the state of Victoria, decides to solve that problem in his own way. He imports rabbits from England. Not tens of thousands, not a government program, just a small group, about 24 animals. He wanted game on his land, something familiar, something British. Rabbits for hunting, a bit of variety, a bit of entertainment. Austin is said to have claimed that a few rabbits could do no harm. The problem was this. In Australia, no one truly understood what would happen when this species was released into the wild. The fastest invasion in the continent's history. Rabbits do what rabbits do best. They eat. They dig burrows. They reproduce at an absurd pace. The Australian landscape is a buffet made just for them. No natural predators. Mild winters. Endless grass and vegetation. Vast open spaces. Perfect conditions. Within just a few years, rabbits spread from Austin's farm to neighboring lands, then further, and further, and further. Within a few decades, rabbits occupy most of southeastern Australia. Then they push deep into the interior of the continent. The speed is shocking. The rabbit invasion front could advance dozens of kilometers every single year. From a biologist's perspective, this is a textbook example of an invasive species. From a farmer's perspective, it's a living catastrophe devouring his livelihood. At its peak, the rabbit population in Australia was estimated at hundreds of millions and possibly even billions. Imagine a country where in some places rabbits are literally everywhere. The ground seems alive. A moving wave of small gray bodies rolling across the fields.
Rabbits are not predators. They don't hunt. They don't tear their prey apart. They simply eat. But that simply means disaster for entire ecosystems. First, agriculture. Rabbits consume young plants, grasses, crops, anything they can nibble on. A farmer sees a field in the evening, and in the morning sees bare ground. This isn't a metaphor. These are real farmer accounts. Crops they worked on for months vanish in a single night. Second, competition with livestock. Australia's economy was built on grazing. Sheep and cattle need pasture land. Rabbits eat the same grass, just faster and in enormous quantities. Third, the natural environment. When millions of rabbits graze everything down to the soil, what's left is exposed earth. And exposed earth under the Australian sun means erosion, wind stripping the soil away, and the destruction of native vegetation. That hits native species hard. Marsupials, birds, and local plants adapted to these conditions. One animal imported from Europe throws the entire system out of balance. The Great Rabbit Fence. When rabbit numbers reach almost apocalyptic levels, Australia decides to defend itself. At first, locally. Hunting, traps, poisons. But that's like patching a sinking ship with a bandage. At some point, authorities in Western Australia come up with an idea straight out of a movie. let's build a fence. Not a garden fence, but a barrier measured in thousands of kilometers. This is how the so-called rabbit-proof fence is born, a structure meant to block the western part of the country from the wave of rabbits advancing from the east. Several fence lines, thousands of kilometers of wire mesh stretching across empty wilderness. One of the largest fencing projects in history. The problem is, rabbits dig underneath, find gaps, exploit every weakness in the system. The fences slow the invasion, but they don't stop it. Australia literally builds a wall against rabbits, and still, the plague keeps moving forward. Biological warfare, virus versus rabbit. When fences aren't enough and hunting is just a drop in the ocean, Australians reach for a weapon that sounds like science fiction: viruses. In the mid-20th century, to fight the rabbits, Australia deploys myxomatosis, a viral disease that causes severe symptoms in rabbits and is usually fatal. The virus is released into the population. The result? In many regions, rabbit numbers collapse by more than 90%. It looks like Australia has won the war. But nature doesn't follow human plans. Over time, some rabbits prove more resistant. The virus evolves, sometimes becoming less lethal. Rabbits that survive pass their resistance on. The population begins to recover. A few decades later, Australia turns to another biological weapon, a virus causing what's known as rabbit hemorrhagic disease. Once again, regions overrun by rabbits see their numbers crash. Once again, there is hope. But the story repeats itself: mutations, resistance, and nature's long, slow revenge. Why it's still a problem. You might think that after more than 150 years of fighting, endless campaigns, fences, poisons, and viruses, Australia would have dealt with the rabbit. Not quite. Rabbits are still one of the country's most serious invasive species. They still eat crops, destroy pastures, undermine ground and infrastructure, degrade soil, and compete with native species. Every year, the costs tied to their presence are counted in the hundreds of millions of dollars. One thing is certain: Australia will never be able to rewind the tape back to the world before 1859. Rabbits have become part of the landscape. Unwanted, but real. A big lesson from a small animal. Rabbits in Australia aren't evil. They're only doing what evolution designed them to do: eat, dig burrows, reproduce fast, and exploit everything nature gives them. The problem isn't the rabbits. It's the people who believed you could move species from one side of the world to the other with no consequences, just for fun, for hunting, on a whim. 24 rabbits, imported out of nostalgia for England, turned into a wave that wiped out parts of Australia's ecosystems. So the next time you see a cute little bunny, remember that in one place on Earth it became a symbol of ecological catastrophe. Because in nature, there are no small decisions when humans play God and try to rearrange the world to fit their own design.
If you want more stories about how a single species can turn an entire country upside down, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments, which eco-disaster should I break down next? Australia's rabbits are done. So what's next? The mouse plague? Cane toads in Queensland? Or feral cats wiping out bird populations on islands? This was the story of how an innocent Christmas gift turned into a curse for an entire continent.